Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich speaks on the band's infamous documentary, Some Kind of Monster, and if there were any scenes that he wishes were cut from the film. Plus, Dee Snider is really disappointed with Alice Cooper. We'll let you know why. Stick around, we got a lot to get to.
Rock Feed needs you to subscribe right now with notifications on so that we may enjoy a plethora of subscribers. Say 1 million perhaps? No? Yes.
He does such a better job explaining than I do, so hit that subscribe button. All right, before we get to this story about Metallica, Lars Ulrich is speaking in a new interview. We have some news about Ozzy, and we have some news about Dee Snider and Alice Cooper that we're going to get to. Let's talk about Alice Cooper first. In a new interview, Dee Snider is basically expressing profound disappointment with Alice Cooper because Alice Cooper basically said that he doesn't feel like that musicians should be out there convincing people on who they should vote for. That rubbed Dee Snider the wrong way, and now he is calling him out for it. In a 2018 interview with The Guardian, Alice Cooper famously said, "I don't look at Bono, Sting, and Bruce Springsteen as political. I look at them as being humanitarian. I'll contribute anything humanitarian, helping people who can't help themselves. But when musicians are telling people who to vote for, I think that's an abuse of power. You're telling your fans not to think for themselves, just to think like you. Rock and roll is about freedom, and that's not freedom." And with Alice Cooper saying that way back in 2018, which feels like a lifetime ago, apparently Dee Snider was never aware of that quote until this week. Rat's Stephen Piercy shared an image of the quote on his Instagram, to which Dee Snider commented and said the following. He goes, "Fair enough, but Alice Cooper told me he wouldn't have testified at the Senate hearings on censorship either. I did, and I got a lot of heat for it at the time. It may have not been the best thing to do for my career, but sometimes you have to take a stand." And then, apparently still thinking about the quote, the next day he offered in a tweet about this quote. He said, "Reading this quote from Alice Cooper again, assuming it's accurate, I'm hugely disappointed in his calling musicians speaking out an abuse of power. Alice is a friend and a hero to me, and I know a lot, too much, about the man. Many of his heroes and inspirations are people who spoke out against political positions, and his own legacy challenged us to question the accepted norm. I ask you, Alice Cooper, is it okay to challenge art, but not philosophy? Don't let it all come down to doesn't it all come down to questioning beliefs, rather?" So far, there's been no response from Alice Cooper. We'll let you know if he does respond, but I think that every musician has the right to say what they want to say, and the fans have the right to decide whether they like what they hear. I don't discourage any musician from sharing their opinions on politics or on any topic whatsoever. They can choose to do that, or they can choose not to do that. It doesn't matter either way. And you guys, as the fans, you decide what you like. You can say, well, that's not really my taste. I don't agree with that, and I don't want to support it. And so I don't think that it's an abuse of power to tell people what to vote for. I think it's giving, your fans information about whether they want to continue to support you. I think most people will. But I would also say that 99% of people who hear political opinions from any celebrities probably have already made up their mind. It's like watching political ads on TV. When you see those political ads, do they really ever change your mind? Are you the type of person that watches it on TV and goes, huh, I didn't know that. I'm enlightened now. I don't think that really moves the needle for anybody, and neither does a tweet from any musician. I just think that we're all just projecting out into the void and screaming out into the wind, and it really doesn't. I don't think it's as influential as people give it credit for. And ultimately, the information's out there for everyone to decide what they like and what they're into. It's simple, and everyone should be allowed to do that. Musicians absolutely should be able to express their political opinion or choose not to do so, either way. So let's move on and let's talk about Ozzy Osbourne. He is opening up in a new interview. While he can't perform on stage due to health reasons, but especially due to the COVID restrictions, he is not sitting around not doing anything. In fact, he's doing the best thing he could possibly do during these lockdowns, which is work on another album. If Ozzy can't be on stage, then the best thing for him to do, obviously, is to record some new music, and that is exactly what he's doing. So here you have NME, where it says Ozzy Osbourne says he's just started to work on a new album. The Black Sabbath frontman released his last solo LP, Ordinary Man, which was recorded with Andrew Watt and featured Post Malone, Slash, and Elton John back in February. And he spoke in this new interview talking to radio.com. I'm doing another record right now. I just started to work with Andrew Watt again, which is Post Malone's producer. It's what gets me up in the morning, and it's what I'm here to do. It saved my life doing that last album. It's better than sitting around all day waiting for the pandemic to be over, and then you go, oh yeah, I'm a rock and roller. I'd better do another album. You got the effing time in the world and to make it the best album possible. And Ozzy said last month, believe it or not, that he's never going to retire from music. He may retire from, performing live, at least in the touring sentiment, but he's not going to stop making music, which, do with that what you wish. And he says, the last time when I will retire, when I can hear them nail my the lid on my box, and then I'll do an encore. I'm the Prince of Darkness. When you feel that audience jumping, it's better than an orgasm. It's the best love affair of my life. The party is on, man. I feel honored that people still want to see me, and that's wonderful coming from Ozzy Osbourne. We'll let you know if we hear anything about the projected release of that album. I would expect it to come out next year and accompany that No More Tours 2 whenever he can actually finish that tour. And now with S&M 2 out, the Metallica box set, which features their performance last year with an orchestra, the follow-up to their infamous S&M record, which is one of my favorite live albums ever. Lars Ulrich has been doing the media rounds in support of this album and giving all sorts of interesting interviews, and this is a new one that he did with Vulture, and he was asked a great question about whether or not he would like to see any scenes cut from some kind of Monster, their documentary that came out that showed them working on their Saint Anger record, or if there were actually any scenes that were cut out. And if you haven't seen Some Kind of Monster, it is a crazy film, and it shows Metallica on the brink of breaking up. They're working with a therapist for the band. The therapist becomes at odds with the group. The members of Metallica are screaming at each other during the film. It depicts the first time that James Hetfield went to rehab. There's that infamous scene where Lars Ulrich is screaming in James Hetfield's face, and it just shows how the band came to be the band that they are today. It showed them auditioning Rob for the band and actually offering him to join the band. It's just so much about that film. It's a great, fantastic documentary. But for years, there have been questions about whether or not Metallica members would regret actually how much they showed of the film. You can really tell that they just put it out there for the world. They have so many parts of that movie that are very delicate in their personal lives. They show Dave Mustaine from Megadeth meeting with them and expressing, the feelings that he had over being removed from Metallica and essentially being left on the side of the road to send home, on a flight with no advance notice. And it's just a really prolific film. And so he was interviewed over here on Vulture, where they talked about a lot of different topics, and it's what makes a great drummer and some of their underrated Metallica songs. They said that the hardest song to translate to S&M 2 was probably, he says, the songs that were picked, one of the criteria or the primary criteria was that they could translate it into that kind of collaboration where they could be embellished with an arrangement either by Michael Kamen or Michael Tilson. And it goes back to that kind of chicken of the egg answer. If it didn't work well, we didn't pursue it. There were certain songs, Creeping Death or Fade to Black, that didn't make either of the projects. There were some of the ones from the first go-around that didn't age well for the second project, Chicken or the Egg. There was nothing that was forced at that level, as he mentioned. So I'm going to move on down to the part where he says a Metallica song that he never wants to hear again. He says, there's a song called Eye of the Beholder on the Justice album. Whenever I hear that song, it sounds kind of like, I guess we don't want to be super disrespectful to it, but it sounds really forced. It sounds like you put a square peg in a round hole. It sounds like it's got two different tempos. There's kind of a 4/4 feel in the intro and on the verses. And then I think the choruses are more of a waltz tempo. It literally sounds like two different worlds rubbing up against each other. It sounds very awkward to me. I'm not a huge fan of that song. And here's the part where they talk about 2004, Some Kind of Monster documentary. He was asked, is there a part of 2004's Some Kind of Monster documentary that you wish wasn't cut? And he says, the basic structure for collaboration of any kind is trust. And when you trust the people you're working with, you sort of learn to step away. We trusted Joe and Bruce, the producers who were directing, and there were times when some of the stuff was hard to watch, and there were times when it was like, whoa, was this too transparent? But we trusted their gut. There was no direction from the band or the manager or anybody going, you know, that thing that happened on Thursday, make sure nobody ever sees that and make sure the film gets burned. There was none of that. We stuck with it, and I'm proud that we stuck with it. And I think that anybody who's ever seen that fan or that film as a fan or a member of a band probably was better for it. It shows conflict resolution and, when they're at their very lowest and how you can deal with ego and all sorts of things like that. And, the band deserves a lot of credit for that. So we will keep you posted if we hear any new updates on that Ozzy record or anything from Alice Cooper or any new news from Metallica. Of course, if you're new here, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss out on breaking news and updates. Thanks as always for joining us here today at Rockfeed, and we'll see you all very soon.